Welcome to postseason baseball. The Chicago White Sox begin their march to the World Series. Here to recap the big moments and analyzing the critical decisions is your favorite source of Chicago White Sox talk. This is the Sox Machine postseason show with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to Sox Machine Live. But unfortunately, Rob, the White Sox march to the 2021 World Series ends as we are streaming live on youtube.com/SoxMachine and also on Twitter as well for those that are watching on Twitter. Welcome to this episode of Sox Machine Live. It is going to be a sad episode because the Chicago White Sox lose Game 4 of the American League Division Series in a laugher, 10-1, as the Houston Astros now move on, winning 3 out of the 4 games, and they will be playing the Boston Red Sox in the American League Championship Series, with the winner moving on to the World Series. Joining me is the managing editor of SoxMachine.com and the co-host of the podcast. It's Jim Margulis. And Jim, I don't know how, we've had this conversation often over 8 seasons podcasting together. How do you want your team to lose? And that was a butt whooping by the Houston Astros today in the final game for the Chicago White Sox. Really not close after the 4th inning. And I guess that's an easier pill to swallow than watching the White Sox lose 4-3.
I think so in this case, just because you had the subplot coming in with home field advantage and whether the White Sox should have done more to try to secure it, whether they, whether you can go back through the game log and see like which 2 games the White Sox would most regret losing because of it. And I don't think home field advantage would have made a difference. It's kind of where I'm at. Maybe it's different when it's 1-1 versus 2-1, like say if the games broke the same way where you feel like you're okay going into Houston, but it just struck me as 2 teams on different levels. The Astros are, they're a complete team. They've been there. They know what works. The White Sox got there once and they got there during a full season, but now I think, there are some roster knots to resolve. There are, it's a decent 26-man roster in terms of, you count to 26, you have a pretty good roster, but I think you have some players, you have some free agency decisions coming up, you have some long-standing vacancies, like right field, for instance, that need to be resolving. And so it's going to take some finessing. This is going to be a fascinating offseason, and I think the way that they lost does make decisive action easier to go through. I think if they lost like 5-game series, all by 1 run, you can think they're just right there. But when you lose this decisively, a thorough undressing, Rick Hahn, I think, has leeway to make bolder moves if he thinks that it addresses something he saw on the field.
Well, before we have any of those talking points, I hope everyone that's watching the live stream grabs a beer. We can toast, as our friends from the 108 do often.
So...
yeah, maybe you're going straight to the bottle after what transpired. But cheers, Jim, to the 2021 season as it is over for the Chicago White Sox. I am going with a beer called Scotty G's Pie and Ice Cream. It's supposed to taste like apple pie a la mode. It's okay. Very heavy on the cinnamon and the lactose. What is your drink of choice?
I'm going with a Golden Drac, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Belgian beer, 10.7%.
There you go.
Yep. I'm a fan of the Belgians, and it's one of those beers where I see it on tap, I get it, because it's very, you have to be going to basically a Belgian bar or pub that kind of specializes in the beers in order to find it. So I figure get a special one, and given the way they play it, a strong one. So.
Yeah, so in Game 4, for those that are still interested in talking about the game, Carlos Rodon discovered his 99-mile-per-hour fastball, even though it was for an inning. And that was really eye-opening. And that gave me hope that I think Rodon can last 4 innings, especially if he's got that type of fastball velocity. Unfortunately, that was not the case, as Houston caught up with Rodon and what the White Sox were trying to do as far as their plan of attack against the Astros hitters. I don't think Yasmani Grandal had a good game plan at all for Carlos Correa in his first 2 plate appearances. 3 straight sliders. That's like you're getting him timed up to make a hit on 0-2. And I know that people will say,
fastballs?
no, his first plate appearance where he's single
gotcha.
was 3 straight sliders.
Okay, gotcha.
Second plate appearance is 3 straight fastballs. And it's like, come on, Yasmani. Carlos Correa doesn't have to do a lot of thinking at all. So I don't think Grandal had a good game plan for Carlos Correa, and that burned the White Sox. But I think you make a good point as well, Jim. Rodon lost his breaking pitches. Kopech lost his breaking pitches. Then Crochet came in, and he throws some breaking pitches, and he gets Michael Brantley out. Game 3, the breaking pitches were in the strike zone, and it baffled Houston as far as offensively. It allowed the White Sox to win that game, especially the second half of that game, to shut out Houston. The breaking pitches were not in the strike zone for the White Sox. They had to go back to the fastball, and they got burned.
Yeah, or they were rolling. They were spinning. It was tough just because I was watching Rodon in the early innings, especially the first inning, and just the fastball, you're looking at that first, and that checked out. Maybe you check it in the second inning, just make sure he doesn't drop off. It's just not adrenaline that burns out, and his arm is, maybe doesn't feel so great after sitting. But his velocity was fine, second inning, and even in the third, especially given that we'd seen him succeed with less. But then I started watching the breaking pitches, and they were not there. Like they were kind of floating on him. There wasn't the sharp break. He did not have access to the back foot slider. He didn't get any swinging strikes over the last 2 innings. And that's, I think, why Grandal didn't want to go slider, just because, Correa said after the game that he would have fallen over the plate if Rodon threw a slider. But I think he was looking fastball because I don't think they respected the slider. Like, I think they just didn't expect him to throw it. Like, he had the opportunity to get Alvarez, cannot locate it, couldn't throw it anywhere close. The sliders that were in the zone were over the plate, and the ones he could not find that put away pitch. So that's why I think, when it came to both Rodon and then Kopech, who also had problems with this slider, got a couple swinging strikes, but also, the mystery evaporated on him pretty quickly. I think it became a decision for Grandal going to the pitcher's strength, and the fastball was Rodon's strength. The slider wasn't there. It seemed like he was checking his fingertip a bit too, so that might have been playing into it, just not getting a good grip, whether it's a blister problem given the inactivity that he's had over the last months. Perhaps that's a thing where his fingers weren't what it was, but I think it wasn't Grandal's greatest moment. I think for Grandal, the bigger one is the Garrett Crochet 3-0 pitch to Bregman with the base open lefty coming up. That was Lance Lynn against Vlad Jr. all over again, except Grandal is a veteran and Sebi Zavala is the rookie. Like, that's a case where, if Tony La Russa blames Zavala for that pitch call the last time, I would think that that's Grandal's responsibility to have the buck stop with him on whether to, retreat against Bregman and go against the lefty, which Crochet was way more equipped to face. But I guess the good news is they lost so thoroughly that, all of the White Sox flaws, I wrote about this recap, like all the flaws, their ground ball flaws, their bullpens, batting average of balls in play flaws, Aaron Bummer, Craig Kimbrell's, they all kind of just coalesce together to create one beautiful season summary of the ways that everybody was worried about them.
And you touched on what happens next, and we'll have that conversation a little bit further. But in this 4-game series, the White Sox allowed 31 runs. You can't have it. And, we had people like Steven Nelson and Mike Farron come on the show, and we even talked about it as well, that the White Sox supposedly had the advantage on the starting pitching front and supposedly had the advantage in the bullpen. You wouldn't be able to tell if you watched this series because Houston, 31 runs in 4 games, that's an incredible amount. And they scored at least 6 runs in each of the 4 games. That's very hard to win a series when you are just allowing that many runs. So while the White Sox pitching staff was good enough and maybe their strong suit to win them a division title in 2021, if they are thinking World Series in 2022, this pitching staff's not good enough. And you can go right back to this series against the Houston Astros. They are not good enough. And I don't necessarily know on how they're going to get better without outside help, of course. Or they don't face the Houston Astros in 2022. But looking back at this series and just recapping this series, that was probably my biggest disappointment, is just how poorly the White Sox pitched in these 4 games.
Yeah, I think Giolito had the longest start at 4 innings, 4+. So that's the case where it's a starting pitching based team, and when the starter goes 4 innings, that renders a lot of the rest of the conversation moot. Like, say with the game 2 with Giolito starting the 5th when he shouldn't have. Like, that was Tony La Russa's fault. Rodon facing blanking on who is the hitter. Correa. Like that's the case where in that at bat, like I didn't like him facing Correa because I didn't think he had a slider. I thought he just had a fastball and Correa was geared up for it. That's the case to go to Kopech, righty, but stayed in one batter too long. But you just saw all the ways. Like I think if your long start of the season is 4+ innings, you really have to manage a perfect series almost. And no manager does. No manager, manages a perfect series. Like it's really hard because there are humans involved. They're always reads, whether it's like they play by the numbers or the numbers sometimes don't work for them, like the probabilities, like with Kevin Cash and Blake Snell, like that conversation. Like sometimes you do it by the book and it turns out to blow up and people are unhappy that you did it that way. So, managing between what the odds say and what the people say and how people are going to react is like, it's hard. And you have to acknowledge some mistakes because Dusty Baker didn't have a perfect series either. But when you have, Giolito going 4+, Lance Lynn 3 2/3, Dylan Cease not making it out of the 2nd, Carlos Rodon throwing 2 scoreless innings to start, and that represent the high water mark for White Sox pitchers. Just that's you'd have to like nail probably 90% of your moves the rest of the way in order to have a chance of winning. And the Astros did not allow it; they forbade it. And at least, like I said, it's thorough enough to where you can't really feel bad, or maybe you can just feel generally angry, but at least you're not going to be, kicking yourself or you're going to be thinking like Tony La Russa is going to be kicking himself for one wrong decision he made, or, like Eloy Jimenez for one bad at bat that he had, or it was a team failure. It was a team effort. It was, probably like, you can even expand that organization effort a little bit in some areas that they were short. Like Liam Hendricks, we talked about it before the season. When your biggest expenditure in the offseason is a closer, that's not great because you can't guarantee that he'll have any work to do when it matters. And sure enough, he did not have one situation where he actually made a difference. And that's when you have like, say, him going nuts or him being idle while you have like Jock Peterson turning October into Jocktober. You have Kyle Schwarber having a big series. You have Michael Brantley having a big series. And you think about all the ways where the White Sox were putting the hood ornament on a car that wasn't worth it. That's a case where they might want to consider just exactly now that they're thoroughly they've been reacquainted with the off season, or with the postseason rather. They now have the off season to realize like what's most important when you get there. Like having a bunch of relievers is good, but closer not necessarily. I think just having the parts of the team that create save situations in the first place is really, that's really what gets you there, and really what gives you the biggest chance of actually winning games when it gets to October. Not having a closer who can preserve 1-run victories if you're thinking your margin is going to be that small.
Well, let's shift over to the offense because the White Sox offense scored 1 run. Thank you, Gavin Sheets. He gave the White Sox the lead. Believe it or not, the White Sox were actually winning 1-0 after the second inning. And then innings 3 through 9, they lose 10-0. But Gavin Sheets hit his first postseason home run of his career. So congratulations to him. And then
And nobody else.
And nobody else. Yeah, Gavin Sheets also had a double for today's game. He provided the extra base hits. And the offense. It was frustrating to be at the stadium because when you're there in person, you can see on how the defense is positioned. And my lord, Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa could not be playing any closer to second base as a second baseman and shortstop. They're right there in the middle. And for XYZ reason, the White Sox hitters just keep thinking, I'm going to hit it right through the middle of the infield. That's what they want you to do. And it was just disappointing that they can't make in-game adjustments where they've got 25 yards of distance between Altuve and first base through the right side of the infield. Like, if it's going to be a sinker on the outside corner, go with the pitch and hit a single into right field if you don't believe you're going to be able to elevate the ball. But just constantly hitting it up right into the defensive position just tells me the White Sox hitters are not paying attention to where the defenders are, and they're just swinging at the plate with very little game plan at all. And that part was very frustrating to continue to see throughout this game, and we saw it in the 2 games in Houston. This offense has a lot of potential. They really do. And if they stay healthy, they're going to score a lot of runs in 2022. But they're never going to hit their ceiling, or they're not going to hit on all cylinders unless they figure out how to reduce the amount of ground balls, Jim. It's just it's too many ground balls from this lineup that's got so much power potential.
Yeah, that was one of the flaws we talked about, just specific to this Astros matchup and how the Astros are pretty good at getting ground balls, and they have a pretty good defense, especially around the infield. And as we saw, like, they are well positioned, and the White Sox were not. Like, they did not have that edge. That's a thing I think that the White Sox are going to have to consider going into the offseason, assuming Tony La Russa is back for next year, and I've seen nothing saying otherwise. But given his age and such, you never know. Like, and given the uncomfortable hiring, and the fact that, we'll see what kind of. I'm curious whether any disagreements in the front office will form based on the way they went out. Like, that's the kind of performance they had, is the kind of performance where people get salty, like the way Rick Renteria went out last year. Like, when he wanted more pitching, the White Sox didn't do anything. They ran to a wall. They had the bullpen game in Game 3, and the White Sox didn't like how the front office didn't like how it was managed. Renteria got let go in surprising fashion, and given the way they got they got blown out here, 3 of the 4 games, like, this could be the situation where maybe there is a philosophical divide to where they say, like, here, or if there is, they could say, like, let's look at the all the singles that got through. We've been trying to tell you this. This is what you did and said. It's not working. This is all speculative, but just when it comes to just how badly they played and what we saw last year, I am curious to see whether any kind of changes happen to try to, whether it's get the ball in the air, whether it's, just updating defensive spray charts, whether it affects the, just the talent acquisition and the emphasis on late innings over runs and lineup modularity and optimization, that sort of thing. Like, it'll be curious, but this is a resounding enough loss and a clear enough loss to where there are going to be some difficult decisions to make that could involve favorites of the team, just because, maybe the pieces don't match up. Maybe you have too many players who hit too many ground balls, or, just something like that, to where they need some way to diversify their attack. So one specific pitching staff can't neutralize them so easily.
Well, I mean, the guys are hitting too many ground balls. Okay, that starts with Jose Abreu, and that starts with Eloy Jimenez. They hit too many ground balls. Abreu hits into too many double plays. I don't think you're getting rid of those guys. They're going to be on the team in 2022. Now, that's the point that I'm getting at
Yeah.
offensively. And I wouldn't be surprised if Eloy Jimenez plays some Dominican Winter League ball, because after missing so much of this season, I think he needs more swings in games to break out of this funk and to stay in shape and be ready for spring training. Like, don't be surprised if Eloy Jimenez does that. Many major leaguers do, to, again, just stay in shape and stay in rhythm, because he did not end the season well with the Chicago White Sox coming off the injured list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
the case, too, where they could say, like, yeah, and this is, I'm looking forward to the offseason plan project for this reason, but somebody could make a case for trading Eloy Jimenez just based on the fact that he's redundant with other positions and such. Like, that could be a case where he's got some value and they might just see a way to make a tough decision, but maybe get a left-handed bat, maybe get a little bit more athleticism, just something to where, yeah, I think there's just, there are a couple positions where there are like players and they have to figure out how to unstick themselves. Whether that's, somebody like Jimenez making strides, improving and unlocking his talent for good, or whether the White Sox try to make a ballsy trade to that maybe makes people unhappy, but also gets a high upside player from another organization. Like, I can see arguments. So I'm looking forward to the offseason plan project and looking to see just how bold people get, because like the case like Nick Madrigal, they traded him. Like, I did not see that coming. Like, they felt that they have second baseman coming up and they felt like they can replace what he offers. So, with Jimenez, he's got an immense ceiling, but when it comes to just his mediocre left field play, his ground ball hit, he's right-handed, just like he does replicate a lot of the flaws the White Sox have in one player. So that's why I could see some people saying, like, this is how we get out of this. We take here's the boldest step. So that's why I'm looking forward to the project, just because, the Nick Madrigal trade, I think, opened up a lot of possibilities in terms of just whether, draft, where they were picked in the draft, or whether, what trade they came over on, you can divorce some attachment from that.
We'll have more as far as recap episodes this upcoming off season for the Chicago White Sox, for the Sox Machine podcast. We'll break down each player or the important players. Not every player is going to get their own off-season outlook. 2021 review episode this upcoming off-season. But for the Sox Machine podcast, for future episodes this off-season, we will take individual players and break down what went well in 2021, what didn't go well, and what their 2022 outlook is going to be. I do want to bring this comment up because Carlos Rodon spoke to the media after the game, and when asked about his pending free agency, this is from Vinny Duber of NBC Sports Chicago, who tweeted this out. Carlos Rodon said, "It's been an interesting road for me, and to have the opportunity to pitch in an important game, it meant a lot. So thank you, White Sox fans, and thank you to the organization," end quote. Jim, Carlos Rodon is a Scott Forrest client. And boy, that sounds very familiar to what Garrett Cole said after his last game with the Houston Astros in 2019, or no, in the 2018 season after the World Series. Did Carlos Rodon just say goodbye to the Chicago White Sox and the fans?
I don't know. Like, when he said, like, White Sox fans, that could just be his, the last time he has a public forum to have his, words, relayed to the public while everybody's paying attention to him. So it just might be a way for him to use the opportunity, given that his contract is up, given that he is not a member of the White Sox, that could just be an acknowledgement. I don't think it's as bitter as Garrett Cole's was. Like, when it comes to Garrett Cole, that one was bitter. That one was, he was not wearing the Astros cap. He was done. Like, he was unhappy that he didn't pitch. Like, Rodon pitched. He had a chance to extend the season. He wasn't able to see it through, and a lot of other people could. It wasn't just him, but just he wasn't able to do what he wanted. A lot of players weren't able to do what they wanted. So I don't see the same bitterness, but I am guessing that he is thinking he's going to be on a different team next year.
Yeah, and Carlos Rodon is going to be one of the first players that we have our review episode for, because we don't know what the future holds for Carlos Rodon. After the World Series, there's going to be a 5-day period for the qualifying offers between the teams and the players that are eligible for a qualifying offer. Carlos Rodon is one of those players eligible for a qualifying offer. Thanks to MLBTradeRumors.com, they are reporting that the qualifying offer is going to be $18.4 million for the 2022 season. So if the White Sox do make that qualifying offer to Carlos Rodon and he accepts, that's good for $18.4 million in 2022. But if Carlos Rodon declines the qualifying offer, we're going to have to wait to see what the new CBA says as far as team compensation.
Rodon, what that actually means.
Yeah, if Rodon signs elsewhere. And that's where I want to end as far as this episode here, looking to the future. The future is murky for everyone in baseball. If you are not a fan of the Boston Red Sox or the Houston Astros, or I haven't checked what the score was between the Milwaukee Brewers and the Atlanta Braves. Did the Brewers win Game 4? Last I checked, the Brewers were winning. Maybe someone in the YouTube comments can chime in. Our podcast listeners who are listening to this, they're tied at 4. So we'll technically at this moment say the Milwaukee Brewers, the Atlanta Braves, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the San Francisco Giants. You can still be hopeful because your team is still in the race. For everybody else that's out of the race now, and the White Sox are one of those teams, I don't know what the future holds or the near future because the CBA expires on December 1st. And if there is no new CBA to ratify before December 1st, Major League Baseball is going to enter a lockout. And when they enter a lockout, all activity stops until there is a new collective bargain agreement between the league and the Players Association. There's no trades, there's no signings. We are stuck until a new CBA is done. And we have been talking about this for more than a calendar year. We know that this moment is going to be, I don't even want to say a heated debate. These two sides haven't agreed on much at all. And this has been simmering for a while between the Players Association and the league. The league continues to sign these mega TV contracts, but the players get a very small slice of the TV money. They want more of that. The league is making a lot of money off of gambling. The Players Association makes $0 off the gambling revenues. They want a piece of the pie for that. The league wants to expand postseason. Players Association wants to redo as far as team control on players. These aren't small things that the Players Association and the league have to agree upon. These are big items. And there's also the whole rules changes and universal DH and possible expansion to 32 teams. It's very hard for me to, even if the season was even done now, Jim, I would be skeptical that a new CBA would be ready for December 1st. There is so much to iron out. I cannot imagine that when this season does end, which it could end on November 3rd, that both sides could have a new CBA ready to go within 28 days. I don't think that's feasible. So I do think that the league is going to enter a lockout, which means the White Sox are stuck. At least Rick Hahn is stuck. He can't make any moves or do anything until the lockout is done. And when the lockout is done, who knows? We may have an adjustment to the 2022 schedule. So that's why it's very difficult for me right now when people are asking questions. What about this pending free agent? Or, what about Marcus Semien? Or, guys, I don't even know if we're going to have the winter meetings where a lot of this activity happens. So there's so much uncertainty heading to this offseason. It adds the sting of the White Sox season ending where it does, because we as baseball fans are going to be sitting on our hands for most of December, if not most of January, and playing this game again like we did in 2020. When is the season starting? And not knowing exactly for sure. And that's kind of a bummer. And it really complicates matters when you're trying to look into the crystal ball for 2022, Jim.
Yeah, I have questions about like the off-season plan project. Do I do it just pretending or just assuming the rules will be the same because we just want to talk about things versus try to project like what arbitration is going to look like, who's reaching free agency when, that sort of thing. That's a case where like I'd welcome some input. I'll probably do like a post about it on Sox Machine just to say, how do you want to do this? Because on one hand, it probably makes sense to wait. On the other hand, that could be a lot of nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's just a lot of good discussion we lose out on just because I enjoy the conversations about just how players fit. I think, that might be the way I approach it, is less about getting the money right, getting the exact payroll and salaries and, arbitration projections right. More about just getting like, especially just given the season the White Sox are coming off of, like, how do you make this roster fit? Like, how do you, what players does this need? How would you address it? And then when it comes to after December, like just, okay, now we'll figure out like whether, how many of these are feasible and, who's going to be making what, that sort of thing. That might be the way I'm leaning now, but it's going to be weird. And it's not necessarily like, I know a lot of people will panic if the players, don't agree. And because usually the players' labor, they get castigated as like the ones who aren't cooperating because they get millions to play a game. But it just, when it comes to labor relations, like every once in a while, it's probably healthy to have a stoppage just in terms of restoring balance and exercising power, because that's the only way that the sports unions can really achieve anything is by stopping the product. And you see it in the other sports like hockey and football and basketball, like they've all had work stoppages more recently because that's just, that's what it takes sometimes to, wrestle terms in your favor. So I'm prepared for one because, it has been like a few CBAs in a row where the player rights have been eroded a little bit, and there probably needs to be some kind of correction to restore some fairness given how many revenue streams have changed. But a lot of people are saying like, what's the rotation like for next year? Who's going to do what? Like, I'm going to need a lot of content ideas to cover December and January and such if all activity is stopped. So don't start stealing my post ideas and wanting instant answers. It's going to take a while, and there are some ideas I'm going to be holding on to preciously in the event that the news dries up by like December 10th and I have nothing to do. So bear with me here.
Yeah, I will. I know that's even more, that might be more depressing than how the White Sox lost the ALDS, but that's the near future right now for Major League Baseball, and the postseason is a great distraction from it. But when we get into the World Series, this is going to heat up because, again, 5 days after the World Series ends, teams are going to make their qualifying offers. We may get first indication of how the Players Association is united as a union if the players just universally decline the qualifying offer. Like, that could be a possibility that no player accepts it. And this goes back to Carlos Rodon. If the White Sox make a qualifying offer to Carlos Rodon and Rodon declines it, okay, well, the assumption is that if Rodon signs X type of contract, the White Sox will get a second-round pick in the 2022 Major League Baseball draft. But that was under the rules of the current CBA that expires on December 1st. And when it expires, what does that new compensation look like? Are they going to make adjustments to it? We don't know. So unfortunately, everyone is held hostage until this CBA matter gets resolved. And that's the big hurdle right now for everyone that covers this sport, is what's going to happen after the World Series into December 1st as far as activity. And we're going to have to wait and see. And that sucks because after this season is done and people have really good ideas on how they want to improve the Chicago White Sox, I'm sure Rick Hahn has ideas on how he wants to improve the team and improve their chances of winning in 2022 to repeat as American League Central champions, because the White Sox in their franchise history have never won back-to-back division titles in 120 plus years of existence. So that's like the new goal: win the division, get back in the postseason, and be a stronger team to win the American League pennant or have better luck going into next postseason. But we can't have those conversations until we have a better understanding of what the new CBA is going to be. Because, folks, I can guarantee you the rules are going to be different. The rules are definitely going to be different in 2022. Teams are going to be operating in a different model, and we're not going to know exactly for sure on how everyone can operate until a new CBA is ratified.
I'm just hoping there's no salary cap, because I hate the word cap hit, or the phrase, I should say. Like, I have no understanding how it works in other sports. I have no desire to learn how it works. So if baseball gets one that's just like, no, those are terrible words. Cap hit. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, we shall see. We shall see. But that's where we're going to end for this episode of Sox Machine Live. I do want to say thank you to everyone for the kind words that have thanked us for our coverage of the 2021 season. We love doing this, and the amount of support that we have gotten from visitors to SoxMachine.com and new subscribers to the Sox Machine podcast, and the continuing support of our growth in Patreon with the number of Patreon supporters supporting us in 2021. We love you guys, and we love doing this, and we will be covering the team all off season, and we'll be covering the news as far as that CBA, and try to continue the conversation the best way that we can regarding the Chicago White Sox until spring training starts, whenever that is. And opening day is still scheduled to be March 31st at home in 2022 against the Minnesota Twins. So stick with us. Our next Sox Machine podcast is going to be on Monday, October 18th. I will be going to New Orleans for a wedding this weekend, which will be fun.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. So you're free.
I don't have to worry about it. But on Sunday, what I like to do is to do an all PO Sox mailbag question. So if you guys are Patreon supporters and you have questions or topics that you've been thinking about and you want us to answer, we're going to do an all mailbag episode this upcoming Monday for the Sox Machine podcast. So think about the questions you want to ask or any topics that you want us to tackle, and send them our way. So again, for our Patreon supporters, at patreon.com/SoxMachine, which is where you can sign up, start thinking about those questions that you want Jim and I to answer, and we will answer them in an all mailbag episode of the Sox Machine podcast. If you are not a Patreon supporter, you can do so at patreon.com/SoxMachine, where we have several different tiers of support at $2, $3, $5, and $10 a month, where you get exclusive content, ad-free versions of both the podcast and website, and you get the first opportunity for our new Sox Machine swag, like our Sox Machine ball caps and Sox Machine pint glasses. We also have annual plans as well that save you 9% from the monthly plans. So if you enjoy our work and you want more and you like to support us, go to patreon.com/SoxMachine to sign up. You can also follow Sox Machine on Twitter. We are at Sox Machine. You can follow me on Twitter at SoxMachine_Josh. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. We'll use Sox Machine Live for any breaking news regarding the Chicago White Sox, as that's a pretty effective tool for us to get the word out there and have instant analysis. So definitely subscribe to our YouTube page for our new videos. And for those that don't get an opportunity to watch the live stream of Sox Machine Live, don't worry, we always take the audio recording of Sox Machine Live and upload it into our podcast feed, which you can listen to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball, and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I am Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.